Our first guest tonight is a multi-talented filmmaker behind 2006's most provocative and jaw-droppingly entertaining documentary, Cocaine Cowboys. His follow-up to that film, titled Cocaine Cowboys 2, Hustlin' with a Godmother, is now available on DVD, and it is an equally fascinating and insightful experience. It really is a great film. Please welcome to the show. Yeah, it's terrific. Please welcome to the show writer, director, actor, producer. There's really nothing this guy can't do. Mr. Billy Corbin. Let me bring him up here on our switchboard. Mr. Corbin, hello.
Well, screw this. I'm going to be on the Terrence Blanchard episode. I love that guy.
Welcome.
I'm going to hang up. I'll call back in a couple of weeks.
Oh, no. You got the double header, baby. You got the two great documentaries, so come on.
That's right.
This is unbelievable. Yes, sir. Many people do not know this. I am an insane, diseased film score buff.
You know, I know that. I was actually going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
You sure? You don't know that. Are you serious? Where'd you get that from?
With an interview you did where they said any other interests that we should be made aware of, and you said you have something like 3,000 scores.
Well, not anymore. That must be an old interview because I think I've got probably about 6,000 or 7,000 now between the CDs and the hard drives. I have to think at least. Yeah, it's a problem. Terrence Blanchard, that's so cool.
It's really cool for us.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked to Howard Shore and Mark Isham and a lot of the great composers, and we just love them. I mean, it's one of my favorite aspects of any movie I see, and I'm just fascinated by the process of giving musical voice to films.
Yeah, absolutely.
While we're on this, we'll get to your movie and you, I promise. Tell me about some of the prized possessions you have in your film score collection.
Well, you know, unfortunately, a lot of them, and you know, these days are like the unreleased ones, you know, the kind of bootleg kind of stuff. Mark Isham actually, he's got some brilliant scores that have never really been released commercially, or at least sort of expanded. Like I got an extended version of The Cooler, the Mark Isham score, which is just beautiful, beautiful score. But my favorite composers are Morricone, John Barry. I like that lush romantic stuff, which is. Yeah, well, it's not reflected anywhere in my work, you know, because I'll never make a movie that would require like a lush, romantic, beautiful score. So I kind of relish in that when I listen to my film scores. I'm like, wow, I'll never make a movie that would inspire something this beautiful. That's what I like to think when I listen to Barry's score. Wow, that's a tough one. You know, I'm partial to Body Heat. I think it's a Miami thing.
Yeah.
You know, because they shot it down here, and
that's cool.
Yeah. But then, of course, all the Bond scores are just, like, iconoclastic.
Oh,
and
they
just
are,
genius,
without a doubt.
You know? Yeah. You know what? The great thing about film scoring is that, like, by the time everybody, like, completely screws up a movie and the movie is just a total lost cause, the script sucked, the acting sucked, everything just sucked, a composer can totally come in and write a brilliant score. And even though it won't fix the movie, at least we've got a brilliant score. You know, like
absolutely.
Yeah, like Jerry Goldsmith was a master of that, of like crappy movie, brilliant score. Like I've got so many Goldsmith scores that I can't even sit through the movie. Can't even sit through the movies. But I love the music. You know?
I'm with you there. I'm with you 100% there.
You know, and Morricone is so, his music is so haunting and he is so daring. I'm thinking of the score to U-Turn. You hear that separated from the movie and you think this will never work on any movie. it just is so unique and it gives the movie such an identity. Because he was writing crazy stuff for the Italian movies that nobody in America ever would have allowed him to. So as soon as he sort of like was able to, to accomplish that, he would then try to bring it to some of his American scores. Sometimes they would keep it like U-Turn. Sometimes they would dump it like What Dreams May Come, which he wrote a brilliant dumped score for. They totally trashed that score. In fact, Elmer Bernstein, they just released a set of 4 rejected Elmer Bernstein scores, including his Gangs of New York score, which is basically his last film score. And speaking of a crappy movie that could have had a good score, but Howard Shore didn't even have a chance to score. They just like Scorsese used like he used like some concert piece or something that Howard Shore had previously written, and then tried to edit his way in and out. But Elmer Bernstein's Gangs of New York score was really rather. I think he was writing the score for the film that Scorsese meant to make, not the film that he wound up making. Because it's a beautiful score and really, really daring and gutsy. You know, another thing about Morricone, he's like I liken him to De Palma in a way, in that he's not afraid to steal from himself.
If you listen to Duck You Sucker and then Disclosure, they're the same score without the bum.
Well,
bum,
okay,
bum.
okay, but De Palma has directed like 10 movies? Okay, I'm sorry, 20 movies, but Morricone's scored like 800 films.
Yeah,
for crying out loud.
You're right.
And there's only so many notes on the piano. You know what I mean? Like
exactly. I mean, no comparison.
I know.
And the guy has orchestrated for every instrument known to man, whether it's human voice or didgeridoo or kazoo or whistle or I mean, the guy tried to expand his palette as much as humanly possible. But 800 films, I mean, I can't even fathom what that means. And I have most of them on CD too. On the
have you heard the Howard Shore the King Kong score that was tossed out?
No, nobody's heard any of that. Have you ever watched? Other than there was that like webisode, like the diaries that they did, where there was a little taste of it of him recording it. But like other than that, that's like the holy grail right now of rejected film scores, because no one really knows.
I mind the score that was used.
Well, I mean, James Newton Howard, I mean, like he can write a score like that in his sleep. I mean, the guy's brilliant. He really, really is. But like I can't imagine that Howard Shore's score was not good. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't fathom that for King Kong. The problem is
Stacey Snider had some issues. Maybe she wasn't getting enough favors from anyone on the set. I don't know.
Well, I think the movie was just that's the other thing is that the composers always get short shrift because like I said, after everybody screwed up the movie, there's also nothing else you can do differently at that point but the score. It's the easiest thing to throw out. It's like, wait a second, this movie sucks. It must be that music we just added. It's like, no, I think it's the rest of the movie. Peter Jackson, hello, like. I mean, I'm not,
Let's talk about your film.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Right, exactly.
Come on, we want to talk about the Miami drug scene. That's
Absolutely.
what I talk about.
Tell me about your film background first of all. Who inspired you, and what track did you take to enter filmmaking?
Well, it's all. I think it's all Billy Wilder. I actually grew up. My friends and I were classic film buffs in like elementary school, and we actually in all fairness, we started watching the James Bond movies. That's kind of where it began. And so John Barry was actually a very early influence, and then the Bond movies, and then Billy Wilder and Alfred Hitchcock. These were the types of movies that we watched. But I always gravitated towards Billy Wilder, and I think it's because the guy absolutely conquered every single film genre he attempted, which might be every single film genre. I mean, the guy's got a cross-dressing comedy, a musical, a World War II, a prisoner of war movie. He's got a movie about making movies, which is my least favorite genre, but he did the best one in that genre. Right. And then he's got, and then he's got a comedy, then he's got a drama, then he's got, a film noir. And it's just like the guy literally made a seminal film in nearly every genre that exists. And that's just outstanding. Not to mention he's a little Jew, so I kind of relate to that too.
You too, in that regard, my friend. But let me ask you this: since we're on Wilder, don't you think it is criminal that this man was not allowed to direct another film after Buddy Buddy?
Well, it's a weird thing. It's a bygone era. I mean, like the Front Page remake was nothing hot. I mean, like it's kind of, what would Blake Edwards do today? It's almost, it comes.
It is like that. It is.
Yeah.
But I think he had a couple more in him. He wanted to. Let's put it like that. He begged.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. I mean, I just, and God knows it's easy to say I'd love to have seen that. But, at the same time, I think at the time that he was trying to set those up, I don't know if he would have found a home that would have let him do his thing. You know what I mean?
Not
like
in the 80s. No, you're right.
Yeah,
I mean, you're right there.
Yeah, there might have been way too much. Now, in the 90s, it would have been cool because, maybe there would have been like kind of a Miramax opportunity, or something that would have kind of let him just do his thing, or the financiers that always seem to invest in Woody Allen movies even though they never make any money. Like maybe he would have gotten the freedom and independence in the 90s, but in the 80s, I think it would have just been way too corporate for him to have actually accomplished something that you would have gone, wow, that was really wonderful and Wilder-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Now you're a Miami resident, right? You're from Miami.
Yes, sir.
And I'm actually from Lakeland, so which is featured in Cocaine Cowboys.
Yes.
Oddly enough, what about Miami inspires you as a filmmaker?
Well, like when we went to Sundance in 2001 with Raw Deal, A Question of Consent, our first doc, which is actually not too far from your home, took place at the University of Florida in Gainesville, and about an alleged rape there that was caught on videotape by some frat guys at the Delta Chi house. And, that's a Florida story, a Florida true crime story, of which there's a lot of those. But it wasn't really a Miami story, which was our home, which was, I got to tell you, growing up here, reading the newspaper, watching the news, there has never been a dearth of colorful characters, of great stories. Edna Buchanan, the Pulitzer Prize-winning former crime reporter for the Miami Herald, and now she's a novelist, she said, when we interviewed her for CC1 for the first Cocaine Cowboys, I don't think this made the movie, but she said, it's not a coincidence that the vast majority of fugitives on America's Most Wanted get caught in Florida somewhere. There's something about the geography of the country where if you just kind of tip it a little bit, everything kind of funnels and drains down here in the southeast. So, I mean, so it's just like you just could not escape the wonderful, wonderful stories. And that was the thing that also drew me to Billy Wilder, was like vivid characters and wonderful, wonderful storytelling. So
incredibly vivid characters. And I part of the reason why I loved the first Cocaine Cowboys, and I love both of them, is, it really opened my eyes to the idea that Miami was kind of boomed and built on drug money. The entire Miami skyline, as it's put in your film, that's drug money. I think somebody even comments like, how many people have to die for a shiny skyline. It really puts it in perspective.
Yeah, it was a controversial thesis in that, the Chamber of Commerce doesn't beam that message very proudly out into the world. But at the same time, it's not controversial in that nobody down here is going to challenge you or deny it. You know what I mean? Like nobody wants to wear a T-shirt that says it, but at the same time, no one's going to tell you that you're making this up, and that's sort of the beauty of it, is that we can kind of bring the obvious to everyone's attention and get away with it, and that's the truth, is that when you have the Federal Reserve Bank in Miami has a cash surplus of more money than all of the Federal Reserve banks in the entire country combined in the 1980s, in the midst of an oil crisis that was in the late 70s, in the midst of a really international recession, certainly a national recession,
right.
And you've got crane upon crane upon crane dotting the skyline, building luxury condominiums and office buildings, and who the hell was the market for this down here, and all of these people are just and lawyers being paid in duffel bags filled with cash, and all of a sudden, you had to be on a waiting list to get a Mercedes in the early 80s, or the finest champagnes and wines. It was the latest Rolex. It was just like, it was remarkable. Nobody else could afford anything, and here we couldn't get enough luxury goods to satisfy the market. Then at the same time, 25% of the bodies in the morgue down here had machine gun fire in them. So it's like, you're like, something's going on here, and lo and behold, it was a war. It was a major war that was actually happening.
Yeah, and you talk about colorful characters, and obviously in the first Cocaine Cowboys, it was the godmother was probably the most dynamic out of this catalog of great personalities. Were you aware when you were making this film and you tackled her story somewhat that this was destined to be a film unto itself?
Absolutely. The only reason why we didn't really make a whole movie about her the first time was because we were covering Miami in the 80s. We had a lot of ground to cover because it was really the three acts. It was the drugs, the money, and the murder. And so we needed to get to all that. We had John Roberts and Mickey Monday representing the business side, the drugs and the money, and then we obviously used Griselda's biography to tell the story of the murder in Miami. And also we didn't have an interview with her, which, to tell you the truth, I think actually worked to our benefit, because truth be told, it's kind of the Blair Witch theory, the Jaws theory. The less you actually see and hear from the villain, the better off
right.
you are.
Absolutely, yeah. Now that you've put it that way, absolutely. Because I was going to ask you, did you ever attempt? Is she still living and incarcerated? Correct?
Yeah. Well, she's not incarcerated anymore. She's in Bogota now. We'll get to that in a minute. In fact, because her youngest son, Michael Corleone, was actually at the Cocaine Cowboys 2 Miami premiere just a couple weeks ago. And bringing good tidings and messages from Griselda back in Colombia, and
really?
but now we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
Yes, we are.
But no, okay. The thing is, Griselda's really like, you hear her voice in Cocaine Cowboys too on that that tapped phone line when she was in prison, and she just sounds like a Colombian granny. So I feel like if you actually heard from her, that would kind of demystify the character a little bit, and I feel like she, when she's just sort of this boogeyman or boogie woman character, this sort of mythological, dangerous creature, who is very, very real, mind you, and so is her biography. It's very, very real. It would kind of take a little bit of the thrills and chills away. But now that we've delved into her a little bit deeper in Cocaine Cowboys 2, I feel like any Cocaine Cowboys sequel now, I think, might be the right time to actually sit down with her and have a one-on-one interview with Griselda.
Wow.
I think.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I think it might be time. I think it's almost that time.
Now, when you're mounting this project, you're obviously speaking to some scary individuals. I mean, you speak to Griselda's her assassin for hire, who is incarcerated. Yeah. Tell me how you procured that interview and what that experience was like.
Well, even more scary were the people that we ultimately didn't interview on camera. Also assassins of Griselda. Kumbamba was the guy with the chainsaw that you see in the first movie, who they put that guy in the bathtub and they drain his blood so that they can break every bone in his body and then put him in a box and toss him at the side of the Florida Turnpike. Kumbamba is in prison in Louisiana. I don't know if he's still in Louisiana, but for a murder of Barry Seal in Louisiana. And because he's only incarcerated for life on that one murder, he couldn't speak to us about anything that went down in Miami in the 80s because there's no statute of limitations on murder. He could be extradited to Florida and face the death penalty for anything that he talks about. So he wrote a letter back to my producing partner Alfred Spellman, who was literally just writing all these guys in prison, Rivi and Kumbamba and Miguelito, which I'll tell you about in a second. And Kumbamba writes back. He says, my apologies, my sincere apologies. I cannot participate in your film. However, as a sign of my appreciation, would you accept a surreal watercolor that I'm working on in prison? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, we have to get, I'm thinking like the Gacy clowns and like the Danny Rawling drawings. I'm like, we've got to get a Kumbamba surreal watercolor for the office wall. And the guy never sent it. I was really, really devastated. But the other dude, Miguel Perez, he was the Marielito who kind of looks like George Foreman, like a Cuban George Foreman in Cocaine Cowboys 1. He's the guy who stabs Papo Mejia in the Miami International Airport, like international arrivals. The guy was just coming back from Colombia through customs, and this guy walked in with a bayonet because Griselda paid him like $100,000 or whatever to go stab this guy with a bayonet because she called the guy the pig, so she wanted him killed like a pig, obviously, right? So the guy goes right into the airport and stabs the guy right in the middle of, like at noon at the airport. And so that guy, we went to prison to visit him twice, and he ultimately decided not to do an interview with us. We had even the second time because he had previously agreed to do it, we brought the whole crew. We set up all the equipment. I mean, at a phenomenal expense and a great expenditure of resources. And the guy came in and said that he wouldn't sit down and do the interview on camera. That guy has since been released from prison and is living in South Florida. So maybe that was the right move for him not to do the interview, because he's now out and free. And Rivi, I mean, you see Rivi in CC1. The guy is just charming and handsome and well-spoken and really disarming, because, you shake his hand and he has this thing that he does where he leans in, like to speak to you, like when you're talking one-on-one, like not off camera. He'll like lean in, so you'll have to he'll whisper almost. You have to get in very close to him, and so you realize you're close to this guy, and every once in a while I had to take a deep breath and kick myself in the face and say, this guy, remind myself who this guy is, and what he's capable of, and he's a killer of women and children, which is, but he's kind of this Colombian Cary Grant, it's frightening.
You talk about that. Was this a tough sell for the subjects that you did get, or was it fairly easy? Did they relish the opportunity to be interviewed on camera?
Well, some of them more so than others. Rivi, I think, is serving 3 life sentences, so I think it was kind of like, what the hell else is he going to do?
Yeah.
Mickey Monday required a little bit more coaxing. Although I think since the movie has come out and become a bit of a cult classic, especially down here in South Florida. The guy is definitely relishing his newfound celebrity. The guy, he would go to the opening of a door, that guy. He's been in, like, hip-hop videos and club openings and DVD releases, and it's very, very funny. And I mean, John Roberts is hanging out with one of my co-executive producers, Dave Ross, goes over to John's house, like, last year. And in his driveway is this gorgeous, like $180,000 car. And Dave's like, he goes, John, where the hell did you get that car from? He's like, oh, it's a friend of mine. He had to go out of town, so I told him he could leave it in the driveway. He goes, who's this friend with an $180,000 car? John goes, oh, Akon. It's like, are you serious? Akon? You know, it's just like, just unbelievable. These guys are like, you know, hip-hop icons now in this community. But Mickey Monday, I don't think saw the real historical significance of what it is that they did. You know, this was just a job, you know, that he had done. I mean, he was really upset about the fact that he had gotten a lot of buddies, you know, a lot of his redneck buddies that he grew up with. He got them involved in the business, and some of those guys were just on the low end of the totem pole, where they would come out once or twice a month and help Mickey, like, you know, just unload a plane on a runway, and they get paid as much as $10,000 cash just for one night's work, once or twice a month. And you're doing that once a month, you're bringing in an extra $120,000 cash, tax-free. Your regular job, you're bringing in what, $12,000-15,000 back in the late '70s, early '80s, you know. And so, but these guys got busted up with Mickey and John when their operation, you know, got raided. And so these guys, you know, lost a lot of time. So he didn't really look at it like, oh, you know, this was us building the city of Miami or anything. So we sat down with him and told him what we wanted to do, and finally he said, oh, well, all right, I'll do it. So Mickey took a little bit of convincing.
Well, your main interview subject, particularly in the second film, is Charles Cosby.
Yes.
And obviously his life is a very colorful one. But
yeah.
What else about him makes him the perfect kind of guide through this film?
Well, first, he's alive. That's very helpful. You know, so many of these guys are dead or in prison or both, or some combination thereof. And Charles, and what's sort of extraordinary about the structure of this story, and he's already got serious interest, I think, from Antoine Fuqua, actually, to do his story. John, you know, has the whole Marky Mark deal for his life story rights. And that's all these people are getting discovered via the Cocaine Cowboys movies. And
it's the American dream.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My story's being told this way.
And he's a survivor. I mean, he's made it to the other side. You know.
Well, you know, in the movie, it's, you know, it's got this wonderful sort of like very cinematic structure, Cocaine Cowboys 2, where Charles, you know, his best friend Banana, who he grew up with, is slinging crack, and, you know, gives him his first ounce, you know, and teaches him how to make crack and mentors him, and then Banana gets murdered, you know, very, very shortly thereafter. Charles, you know, they go and, you know, there's like these, you know, revenge killings, and, you know, to avenge Banana, Charles has to take off out of town for a while, comes back, and starts to build himself up in the business to the point where he gets involved with the Godmother, with Griselda, and then he brings in Donovan, you know, this other young kid who's 13 years old selling pot out on the street. He brings him in, gives him his first ounce, teaches him how the business, and you're kind of seeing this sort of next generation thing, and keeping in mind, like, oh, well, Banana wound up dead, you know, and thinking, like, you know, where is this going to go from here? And what's incredible about this story is that Charles ends up getting out with his life, with some money, with his family, and then Donovan, his protege, essentially, sees Charles get out and be happy and have a family, and he ends up getting out too. Like, he takes Charles's lead basically and gets out and winds up marrying actually Charles's daughter, becoming his son-in-law. It's like, it's one of these stories that you don't typically see. You know, it starts off, you know, kind of ordinary enough, you know, black kid, big family, single mom, you know, like all the sort of stuff you expect to see, you know, falls in with the wrong crowd, starts selling drugs, you know, but the incredible thing here is that there's this happy ending, the somewhat happy ending, you know, which is just kind of, you know, turns the whole, you know, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Juice, Colors, it turns that all on its head, you know, and actually, yeah. So,
I mean, you spoke to it. The happy ending, you know, of you know, is that he's still alive. I mean, that he lived through it, that he made it. You know.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned the colorful characters and the chainsaw sequence and the atmosphere in Miami during that time. I wanted to ask you about Scarface, which has become the ultimate cult classic. Is that considered an authentic portrait of that life amongst that group?
Well, the wonderful thing about the movie is sort of its legacy is or was at least, I think until probably Cocaine Cowboys came out, its legacy was, typical Brian De Palma bombast, over the top, operatic, larger than life, not, just fun but outrageous and over the top. And the truth of the matter is that it was extraordinarily accurate. I think Oliver Stone did a phenomenal job with that screenplay. I mean, he was down here with the likes of these guys that we, that we interviewed. I mean, John, had mountain lions roaming his estate, that he got as a gift for his blonde model girlfriend at the time. And so this kind of lifestyle and those things you see, like Tony Montana giving, the tiger, as a wedding present. I mean, like these sorts of details. I mean, down to that. I mean, you've got the Time magazine Paradise Lost cover. You've got a Barry Seal-esque character, who's on TV talking about the cartel, who the cartel wants to get rid of. You've got the bankers, who are charging. Cash became, it really became a pain in the ass down here. There was no place to put it, and even the banks had no place to put it, and they were risking, a serious attention by taking it. So they started charging you to deposit cash. Large amounts, and they would take 10, 15, 20%. And you see Tony Montana negotiating with the banker. You see the editorials while Tony's in the hot tub watching the editorial. We actually had a guy down here who was the vice president and news director at Channel 4. You see a couple clips of him in the movie, but he did these outrageous, like Bill O'Reilly-esque editorials, just railing on the president and railing on the Marielitos, and that's exactly what you see. And the movie is so frighteningly realistic. The only thing where it really took some liberties is the fact that the Marielitos, as Tony Montana was a Marielito, they never ascended to those heights in the business. They were considered the grunt work, the assassins, the hitman. They make deliveries just like Tony is at the beginning. Those guys never really ascended to the heights that a Tony Montana did. But it was supposed to be. It was also a remake of the Howard Hawks movie, number 32 movie. So the fact that Oliver Stone though was able to be absolutely almost scene for scene faithful to that original story and screenplay, but then also infuse this incredible amount of accurate detail of Miami and the cocaine wars is really, I think, the phenomenal achievement of that film. And of course the Giorgio Moroder score, also unreleased, also commercially unreleased.
Where is that score?
Yeah. Ridiculous. It's not like you have to pay reuse fees to an orchestra. It was a guy and a keyboard, for crying out loud.
Where is the score? We get this horrible hip hop anniversary edition.
Oh God,
where is the score?
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I feel the same way, but the Cocaine Cowboys and Cocaine Cowboys 2, Hustlin' with the Godmother, now available on DVD, and actually the covers of those DVDs are located on our homepage where all of our listeners are right now.
Well,
you click on them, it'll take you directly to Amazon where you can purchase them.
Go do that. You're a full-service operation. Thank you.
I tell you what, we cover all bases here.
Yeah, you
tell me about
voting, folks.
It's been my favorite since it came out. It's been a documentary I've told people, please go check this out.
Oh, thank you.
Tell me about this big screen treatment of Cocaine Cowboys that they're mounting. Do you have much involvement in that at all? I
don't have a thing to do with it. That was John Roberts' deal, that he did with Marky Mark and his company, and I think Mark Wahlberg's actually going to play him in the movie is the plan now. Raconteur, our company, did a deal with a small couple guys, kind of independent filmmakers, maybe guys who might have seen some of their stuff before, Jerry Bruckheimer and Michael Bay. And we did a deal with them to do a 1-hour dramatic TV series in the kind of Sopranos mold, based on Cocaine Cowboys, about Miami in the 1980s. And hopefully, knock wood, we'll be seeing that on cable next year.
I look forward to it.
This opened a lot of doors. Tell me about. I wanted to ask about this because they talk about how good female roles, are hard to come by. Yeah. I can't think of a more explosive female role than the Godmother. I mean, an actress that gets a hold of that. I mean, have you considered? Is there an actress that you have in mind that you would picture in that role?
Well, I get asked that question all the time. I think more than anything, it would come down to the writer. to tell you the truth, rather than the actress, because her story, her life is so unbelievable. It's so outrageous that I think first and foremost you'd have to find someone who's going to be able to capture it on the page in such a way as to make it really moving and believable and accurate at the same time. That's the thing. It's like if you do it accurate, it's going to be absurd. I feel, it's like so. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm very excited actually about sort of incorporating that character into the dramatic TV series, where I feel like would have a lot more room to breathe. You have a character arc of of many hours or many years at least, to kind of to deal with. That was the great thing about Cocaine Cowboys, that our characters in that story are only kind of operating or functioning in Miami for about 6-7 years. So almost with a dramatic series, that can almost happen in real time. Each season can represent a year in Miami, a year in the business, until the government really started to crack down and things, it started to kind of, people couldn't operate as overtly and flamboyantly as they did in the earlier part of the late 70s, early 80s. And so that would be it. I mean, I always hear all kinds of, Salma Hayek is a name that everybody keeps mentioning time and again in reference to the Griselda story. I don't really know why. I think she might be a little too hot.
What about Sonia Braga?
That's a good one. I mean, it's just like, it's like I feel like it's almost impossible to cast this role until you know what this character actually is. That's why. I
understand.
Yeah, it's such a hard thing to say. I love dream casting, but this role, it's like it's too complicated. You have to see what a good writer winds up doing with it first, I feel.
Absolutely. Cocaine Cowboys 2, Hustling with the Godmother. Pick it up, guys. They are both just so fantastic. Mr. Corbin, you are awesome. We could speak to you for 2 hours.
Yes, come back every week. And soundtracks with us.
Anytime, especially when the film composers are on. Anytime.
We are going to do a tribute to film composition pretty soon, and I want you to be with us throughout the entire thing.
You got to be on it.
You're terrific.
Can't wait, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you,
everybody.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.